There are nights that don't announce themselves as important. They don't come with signs or dramatic build-up. They just arrive. Ordinary at first, until something shifts, and afterward, nothing is quite the same. This was one of those nights. It was summer in California, and the heat had settled into the house like a second skin. The kind of heat that doesn't lift when the sun goes down. It just lingers, pressing against you, making even stillness uncomfortable. I remember lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to sleep. I was wearing a bathing suit because it was the lightest thing I owned. Pajamas felt suffocating. Even the sheet felt heavy against my legs. The house smelled like warm dust and stale air. No breeze, no relief at all. I was still awake when the front door opened. It wasn't the quiet click of someone coming home late and hoping not to wake anyone. It was loud, careless, followed by a loud voice, too loud for the hour, and unsteady footsteps moving through the house. I knew immediately that my stepfather had been drinking. He had been with neighbors up the street earlier in the evening. He often was. But this felt different. Louder, more aggressive, like whatever he'd been doing was a little more than alcohol. From my room, I could hear him yelling at my mother. I couldn't understand the words, but I knew the tone. I knew when I was the topic before my name was ever said. There's a particular edge to it, a sharpness that settles into your stomach before your mind even catches up. I lay there, frozen, listening. The voices moved closer, then farther, then closer again. And then the footsteps changed direction. They were coming down the hallway. My heart started racing before my brain could fully register what that meant. I pulled the blanket and sheet up to my chin as if fabric could protect me. As if making myself smaller might make me invisible. I stayed as still as I could, all while trembling. The door burst open. He stood there in the doorway, filling it completely. The light from the hall behind him made his face hard to read, but I didn't need to see it. I could hear it in his voice. Loud, slurred, angry. He was yelling at me about something, but my mind couldn't grab onto the words. Fear has a way of scrambling details. Everything becomes noise, pressure, confusion. I remember nodding at things I didn't understand. I remember trying to answer questions that didn't make sense. Mostly, I remember waiting for it to be over. Instead, he reached down, grabbed my wrist, and yanked me out of bed. We were going across the street, he said. This was going to get straightened out. Across the street lived my friend Ted and his mother. Ted's father had just died a month earlier. Their house still felt quiet in a way that grief creates. Not peaceful, but careful. Like everyone inside was still learning how to breathe again. I didn't understand why we were going there. I barely had time to register that I was still barefoot, in a bathing suit, being pulled outside in the middle of the night. It was around 10 o'clock on a weeknight. The street was dark and still. Porch lights glowed softly, and the air was thick with heat. The pavement was still warm under my feet. He pounded on their front door, hard. Ted's mother answered, clearly confused and then visibly alarmed. He was big, loud, drunk, standing on her doorstep late at night, shouting accusations. He claimed we were ditching school together, that Ted was a bad influence, that something was going on behind everyone's backs. The truth was simple, but truth didn't matter in that moment. Ted hadn't been ditching school. I had. Alone. Quietly. Carefully. Ted was being blamed for something he hadn't done at a time when his world had already been shattered. His mother defended him immediately. She told my stepfather to leave, told him he had no right to be there, told him to get off her property before she called the police. By then, we were all standing in the driveway. My stepfather still had a tight grip on my wrist. My mother had come outside too, trying to calm him down, trying to de-escalate something that had already gone too far. I tried to pull away. I don't remember deciding to do it. I just remember the sudden need to get free. That's when everything tipped. I hit the pavement hard. The world jolted. The heat of the ground came up to meet me, sharp and disorienting. For a moment, I didn't even feel the pain, just the shock of it. The adults were still arguing, voices overlapping, neighbors' windows glowing faintly. My mother begging him to stop, Ted's mother yelling for him to leave. I stood up, and something inside me clicked into place. I ran. Not back toward my house, not toward anything familiar, just away. I ran out into the street toward the main highway our neighborhood branched off from. The night air burned my lungs. My feet slapped against the pavement. Cars passed occasionally, their headlights briefly illuminating me before disappearing again. And to this day, it still blows my mind that people saw a young girl running down the street in a bathing suit and no one stopped. I had no plan, no destination, just distance. Eventually, instinct took over. I turned toward my friend Tina's house. We hadn't known each other long. I'd never been inside her home before, but she lived close and she was the only person I could think of. I pounded on her door. Her grandmother answered. She didn't speak English very well, but fear doesn't need translation. When I kept repeating Tina's name, she disappeared down the hallway to wake her. Tina came to the door half asleep, confused, trying to understand why I was standing there in the middle of the night shaking. I asked her to call the police. Her grandmother grew nervous, understandably so. Then there was another knock. My mother's voice, promising me everything was going to be okay. I knew it wasn't, but I also knew I didn't have many choices. So I went home. That night didn't last long. I didn't disappear. I didn't make it far. By morning, life looked like the same from the outside. But something inside me had shifted. For the first time, I understood that leaving was possible. That fear could turn into motion. That there was a line, and once you crossed it, you never fully uncrossed it. That was the first time I ran away. It didn't look dramatic. It didn't make headlines. But it planted a seed. And seeds, they don't need permission to grow. If this story brought up difficult memories for you, you're not alone. Help is available. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're outside the U.S., local crisis lines are available worldwide. You deserve safety, support, and care. Everyone does.